An entitled mother and her 3 full-grown sons come up to my family at the beach and try to force us out of our spot so that they could take our spots. She screamed and threatened us. So in response, my aunt and I devised a very elaborate system of booby traps so that when they did take our spot, we would take our revenge with those booby traps. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. Recently, I came back home for a visit, and around the table, the subject came to previous holidays, which made me remember this little story of horror. So I thought you guys might like it. Warning, I was, am, and will always be a jerk, and fully understand that me and my aunt did terrible, borderline sociopathic things here, but my shame over the years has degraded. The dialogue in this story has been translated from Russian, so keep that in mind. So this happened a very, very long time ago, around the time that I was about 9 or 10 years old enough to develop a spiteful mindset. At the time, me and my family, which included me, my mother, my grandmother, and my mother's sister, my aunt, and this was during the time when we lived in another country and usually went to holiday in Ukraine around the Black Sea, which is where this story took place. Every morning around 8 a.m., we would head towards the beaches as they were always full and impossibly hot by the time it was midday. So our plan was always go to the beach and leave by around 11 a.m. when it got so hot that you could cook in your own sweat. We would go around the small town surrounding the beach to play games, arcades, and other entertainment, and then go back to our little special personal houses and huts for rest and lunch. Nevertheless, I digress. So on this particular day, we made it to the beach a little earlier, which meant that we could pick out some of the best parts of the beach and set up our blankets before new amounts of glass and trash made it on the beach. For some background, while the Black Sea is lovely, the beaches around the area are only for more experienced who know how to avoid the trash areas. Often beaches were full of broken glass bottles, cigarettes, needles, and many other dangerous things, and thus it was highly advised that you wear feet protection while traveling between point A and B. So me and the gal crew, my grandfather rarely ever comes to the holidays with us, and my grandparents owned a massive house with farm animals and couldn't trust anyone to take care of them, so someone had to stay back, and my dad is a deadbeat jerk, so it was always just us girls. Now about that spot, we found the perfect spot and laid out our things and towels and checked for any bottles or debris, and we were happy to find none. We watched the beach fill up with people, and eventually around 10-ish, we noticed that a very large woman with 3 kids approached us. Now the girls in my family are big, but this was a hippo of unbelievable proportions. We were in a spot right between the sea and the entrance and under a big umbrella that was there for public use. She towered over us. There were lots of people around, but still a few spaces available around to sit nearby, which was very surprising. This woman towered over us and loudly groaned and complained. Let's refer to her as Entitled Mother and her kids as Entitled Kid 1 and Entitled Kid 2, all 3 boys. Entitled Mother says,
"You're in our spot!"
she yelled loudly. All of us blinked unanimously in confusion. My mom even started laughing a little and asked, "Are you having a heat stroke? Or are you for real?" Entitled Mother gasped loudly and started kicking our towels and stuff.
"You're in our spot! We have been sitting here for the last 3 days and now your fat butts are taking my spot! And because of you, my kids are burning their feet, waiting for you cows to move!"
she yelled. My mother and sister burst into laughter, replying, "Well, whoever the cow in this scenario is, it's definitely not us." This is an odd translation, but that's basically what it means. While this was happening, I was building a small sand pile. Her devil spawn suddenly started pushing me and taking some of my sandcastle stuff and bending it, to which I got up, pushed him away, and grabbed my shovel and swung it, telling him to bugger off. I was swinging it repeatedly and hard. I was usually a well-behaved kid, but I have never seen anyone try to break my stuff. And I would do this as we weren't the richest and I was protective over my things. My mother gasped and started crying out for me to move, which everyone in the surrounding area glanced at, but it's Ukraine. No one cares. I love my people, and besides, there was no one to call for help. Police or guards around the beach are not a common thing or very much wanted. My mother has stood up fully to her now and told her, "Take your fat..." We have a better word, Ethiopia, which means fat, hippo, and butt in one word. "An ugly butt somewhere else before the 5 of us collectively cripple
trample you.
She straight up tries to slap my mother, to which I then responded by taking a plastic shovel to her son with sand in it and started jabbing. As his sibling tried to push me away, I spit in one's face and kicked the other. They all started crying and a few people shouted out for her to shut her brats up. The mother then stops midway and grabs her spawns and yells at us.
The second you bees move, I'm taking a spot.
There were quite a few more profanities, but I don't remember every word fully or the conversation fully. Now, mind you, there was no one to call for help as the lifeguards were not even spaced out evenly and miles away, so we decided to have a miniature revenge. My mother tries to tell me off for doing what I did to the boys, but my grandmother defends me and says something along the lines of, "Don't be mad at her. She was defending you." To which we all then agreed to forget and have fun. Now, me and my mother's sisters were a lot closer to being siblings than her and my mother. She was about 10 years older than me, so she was like 19 when I was 9. We were swimming in turns, never leaving our stuff unattended. After about 40 minutes, my mother and grandmother tell us to pack our things up as they were going to get one last dip as we had ours. So me and my mother's sister realized we have a window of opportunity, the revenge. While taking their last dip, me and my mother's sister see that the entitled mother is eyeing our spot, and we had an idea. My mother's sister is just as petty-minded and jerk-minded as me. My mother's sister told me to have a quick look around for broken bottles in the area, and I knew exactly what she was planning. She told me not to touch them by hand and use my shovel and my little claw to pick them up. I took my bucket and my spatula and started running around for about 15 minutes while she packed everything, and I started picking up glass shards and bottle shards with my spatula and all the cigarette buds that I could find, all discussing the thing I could find, which was not hard. I piled them into the bucket. I then ran back to my aunt and she saw the bucket full. She told me to be careful and make sure that no one was watching or cared enough to. This wasn't the first scheme, revenge plot, or act of disturbing punishment we have done, so I knew what to do. We knew that my mom and grandmother would still take a long time. Turning our backs to the entitled mother, my mother's sister started to take out the glass shards and bottles, and me and her started spreading them around that specific area, as this was not uncommon for people to bury their trash so that no one paid mind to it. We started burying them so they weren't visible, the sharp way up, and engulfed the whole area as much as we could while making it look like we were building a sandcastle. My aunt told me to come pick up my grandmother and my mom as we saw them getting out of the sea and drying off. She told me to take them around a slightly different route so that they wouldn't step on our little booby trap. I watched her get up and the entitled mother almost pushed her out of the way and yelled at her to move, to which she just smiled and told her to have a lovely day as the five of us cross-met. We slowly started to head a little bit away and my aunt stops midway where there are less people to put on a few things and stall for time so that we could watch. I saw the entitled mother soccer kick punting the sand tower without checking it. Big mistake. And then she flops down only to yell and howl in pain as she had also sat directly onto the broken glass shards that we hid, cutting up the towel on her leg and thigh entirely. One of the brats, who also tried to break my things, stepped onto the shards and cut his foot by the looks and sounds of it and started yelling and crying and breaking down, and the woman yelled in pain. A few people started being convinced by her and started checking what happened and tried to help the woman as she screamed profanities. She started rolling around and all the cigarette buds and seaweed that we had also placed started getting on her wound and her skin, her towels and her things, and basically engulfed her in trash and all the things that people would be collecting in biohazard suits. My grandmother was horrified, thinking that we were also sitting on this, and my mother looked at the two of us knowing that we did this. She could not say a word and she started shoving us away from the beach in a hurry to get me out. Me and my mom's sister started laughing as my grandmother said, "Oh, praise the Lord that we didn't get cut like that, woman, and it just was the grace of God that saved us." Me and my mother's sister continued laughing as my mother took us aside and told us off. My mother threatened to punish me, usually shaking me hard, yelling at me as she couldn't ground me on a holiday, but my mother's sister took the blame and told me that it was worth it. We sat down in a cafe to get some cold drinks and lunch. Only after about an hour and a half, we saw a few paramedics that started coming towards the beach by maybe 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. The medical care in Ukraine on holiday locations is piss poor, and the only way you get a doctor helping you is if you are actually dying, if that. It was also the dead heat of the day, so the medical paramedics would be too lazy to go to the beach and no one came to help until the sun came down. There was a guy who got tangled in a parachute and help arrived an hour and a half later, so it was safe to assume that these paramedics were for the entitled mother, and that was a satisfying moment as we had realized this woman was basically rolling in a cesspool of illness ice for at least an hour or two before any help arrived, baking in the 35+ degree sun. We most likely ruined this woman's holiday and have most likely put her out of commission for a long time, as those bottles and that hazardous sand and cigarette pits would have definitely given her an infection or at least seriously made it worse. The paramedics and doctors also need bribes there, so this help probably cost her about 500 euros in bribes only, not even counting the cost of the treatment. There are no cameras around, no people who cared, and no proof that we did it, and no way of ever finding us. Hopefully next time that lady learns some manners. Lesson of the story is don't pick a fight with someone and underestimate their mindset, because you may stumble onto sociopaths who will get back at you for being such a delightful person. When you grow up without the internet and only part-time cable TV, you find alternative entertainment procedures which mostly revolve around making a crappy person's day even crappier. So, was I the jerk? This one is pretty extreme. This family might end up getting some serious infections. I know a lot of beaches all over the world are pretty polluted and people don't take care of them, but this one sounds particularly bad. People are just used to having glass hidden inside of the sand all over the place. There's no lifeguards anywhere in sight, there's no police activity, and the paramedics are too lazy to go down when it's hot to pick up people that are in need. It kind of creates a situation where the beach itself in the middle of the hottest part of the day is a no man's land, a wild west where anything goes. The entitled mother obviously initiated this because she went up and started calling them bees and a bunch of other profane terms and saying that it was her spot and they need to move, when this family, the OP's family, obviously got there early in the morning, not only to secure the spot but to beat the heat too. So do you think this revenge was going way too far, or do you think this was justified somehow? Let me know down below and how you would have handled this if this was the woman that you were dealing with. And of course, let me know jerk or not a jerk and why. Am I the jerk for not wanting to make my friend a wedding dress for the cost of materials? So I have a degree in fashion, which some people think means that I can be their personal seamstress. I'm used to this problem and I don't mind helping people, but I never work for free. My pregnant friend recently reached out to me and asked me if I could make her wedding dress and send me pictures of the idea that she had in mind. It isn't exactly a simple dress, but it's also not the most complex one I've done either. I told her that I could for sure do that for her and it would cost £600. She was shocked at this and told me that she thought that I would do it for free and she just pay for materials. I pointed out how many hours this would take me to do and all of the hand embroidery needed. Then I explained I was doing this for a quarter of the price I'd charge other people because she's my friend. At this point, she started to get very upset, telling me I have no idea how much stress that she's under with the wedding and the fact that she's pregnant and how money is tight and how this should be my wedding gift to her and how great it would look in my portfolio. I don't think I'm being unreasonable to want some money for this, but other friends are telling me it's horrible how I'm wanting to charge her for this and it's not like I'm a high-end bridal shop. Am I being unreasonable? Am I the jerk? Why would the friend assume that the original poster here was going to do it for the cost of materials when that's not even something that they had talked about before? I know the prices of wedding dresses can be insane. They go up to be very, very, very expensive in the thousands of dollars. So getting a custom made one from scratch seems pretty cheap for $600. It really comes down to the matter of hours. If you're asking somebody for a favor like, hey, can you help me out for 30 minutes with your specialty craft, whatever that is, that's a whole lot different than telling somebody, hey, I need you to do 50 hours of labor and I'm only going to pay you for materials on this. At that point, it's more than a full-time job trying to make this thing, whereas it would be a lot cheaper in terms of how much time you're spending to just buy somebody a wedding gift and not put hour upon hour of creating a dress from scratch and doing all of the revisions that come afterwards. I don't think this is unreasonable at all. I think the most important thing is that she was upfront before starting the process, which is what the original poster did here. But unfortunately, either way, this is probably going to be a fracture in the relationship one way or another. If one of your friends asks you to do whatever it is that you specialize in, and it was an enormous amount of time like this, how would you handle it? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for arranging a potluck for my sister's apology dinner? So my mom decided to host an apology dinner for my older sister. As my mom was busy writing her apology and whatnot, she asked if I would take care of the food and beverages. I said sure, thinking it would just be for my family of 4, but when my aunts and cousins heard, they also wanted to attend, so I decided to make it a potluck. A potluck is where all the adult guests bring a dish and all the dishes are shared. Of course, I never asked my sister to bring any food because she was the guest of honor. Well, everyone came over and we were all excited to listen to the apology and eat. My sister was among the last to arrive and she was offended that we were serving potluck for her special dinner. I explained that I had carefully planned what would be served. My sister's boyfriend is a vegetarian, so we had 2 meatless options. But my sister yelled at me that the apology apology meal should be prepared, or at least paid for by the apologizer, my mom, in order to show proper atonement. We went forward with the apology dinner, but my sister called me a jerk for undermining the apology. Am I the jerk for arranging a potluck for my sister's apology dinner? We've actually talked about another apology dinner in a separate story way back, but I've never heard of this actually being a real thing in real life. The way that the OP describes it here is as if it's such a formal, official thing. This is now the apology dinner where this must happen and this must happen. The OP defines it by saying it's where someone apologizes to another person in front of the whole family. So if that's the case, did the aunts and cousins know that it was an apology dinner specifically and they wanted to go there to listen to somebody apologize to someone else? I was curious as to what the apology was for, and the OP actually answered that later on in response to someone else by saying the mother tried to break up the sister and her boyfriend for no good reason, his ethnicity. So let me know if you think arranging a potluck for an apology dinner was okay or not. Jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for laughing after my sister implied that my brother's girlfriend's dish wasn't good at Thanksgiving? I'm a 27-year-old female and my brother John is 26. We're both very close, and I was definitely shocked when he surprised us on Thanksgiving by bringing his new girlfriend Chelsea. He was very happy though, and to be honest, that's the only thing we want for him. So we, grandparents, parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, held off on all questions until another time. Anyway, dinner time rolls around and we're sharing everything, and my aunt kind of pulls me off to the side and tells me we're not going to be eating my mashed potatoes because Chelsea brought some and John asked that we serve those instead. I was a little peeved, I'm not going to lie, because I've done the mashed potatoes for Thanksgiving since I was 16, but I got over it pretty fast. I really didn't care as long as they were good. Spoiler alert, they were not good. Everything that could have gone wrong with those potatoes went wrong. They were raisins. She was really excited though, so when she asked everyone if they were good, she got some mm-hmms. You know, the kinds you do with your mouth closed and an uncomfortable smile on your face. Everything else was good, so her dish was highlighted. We all thought we passed it though until my nephew spit it out onto a tissue. She said something about not pleasing everyone to lighten the mood because we were all looking at him, and my brother went, "I'm sure they're glad to have a break from OP's potatoes anyway," and then laughed. I wasn't going to say anything, but my sister, who's 22, said, "We are not," in the most monotone voice, and I just laughed, man. Like one burst of a cackle. Chelsea teared up and the rest of the night was awkward. My brother called me a jerk and is still mad at me. So am I the jerk? The brother obviously knew that the OP always makes mashed potatoes because she's been doing it since she was 16, but he told his girlfriend to make those anyway, or made it seem like it was okay for her to make those anyway. And then when people obviously didn't like them, he tried to throw his sister, the OP, under the bus again by saying, "Oh boy, we're sure glad that we don't have to eat her potatoes anymore," which would maybe be funny if that was sort of true, but it sounds like everyone loves the OP's potatoes, mashed potatoes. Maybe Chelsea, the girlfriend here, doesn't know how to make anything else, and that would explain a lot. But if that was the case, why wouldn't the brother give anyone a heads up that she was coming in the first place? So that way they could say, "Hey, we don't have this other food," or something. It feels like the brother's the one who's a jerk here because he didn't do any of the planning and then takes the easy way out by just dumping on his sister instead of actually trying to set this whole thing up in advance. But let me know how you see this down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories in this series, use the playlist at the top of the description. And next time you live stream, use the cream of the crop music. Search for Cream of the Stream on Spotify or whatever music platform you use for copyright-free music to use for your stream. It's free, Cream of the Stream. Either way, thanks a lot for listening. I'll see you guys next time.